Welcome, everyone, to Workday 101 for managers. Our topic today is the process of terminations. My name is Nikki Sitton. I'm an HR technology change management specialist. And our experts on this topic are Laura McGowan. She is an HRIS technology senior analyst. And Laura is going to be doing the bulk of the presentation today. And then our other expert is Gina Voits. She's an HRIS operations manager. And Gina is on the line. She's going to be working in the Q&A chat today, answering any questions that you might have. And just a reminder, we will not be answering your questions live, verbally, during this session, but you are able to submit the questions via the Q&A. So if you have a question, throw it in there. Gina will answer your question. If we run out of time and we haven't answered your questions, make sure you check out the next edition of the News, Views, and FAQs for all the answers to every question being asked today. And you can find that in the announcement section on the Workday homepage. Also want to remind everyone that the Workday 101 for Manager video library is available in Workday. You'll find this presentation along with all past presentations in that video library. So if you know somebody who missed a session or you'd like a refresher, feel free to watch those at your convenience. All right, so our agenda today, we're going to just jump right in and walk through the termination process. We'll talk about what it means to rescind a termination, how to restore access. We'll look at situations where a termination dates need to be corrected, and then talk about ending contingent worker contracts because that seems to get a little confused with the termination process. So I'm going to hand this over to Laura. Laura, I'm a new manager and I've had my first employee submit a resignation letter. So what are my next steps?
Hey, thanks, Nikki. The manager, John Travolta, and his employee, Danny Zugo, has just given notice that they are moving away from SSM. So my first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to go to Danny's profile. You can type their name up here in the search bar. That will take me straight to the employee's profile. Next, I'm going to click the action button, go down to job change, and that's where I'm going to find my terminate employee option. All right, now we're in the termination form. The first field to fill out is the primary reason. Why is the employee choosing to leave SSM? This could be for many different reasons. So we'll just pick one here and we'll say commute time. Now, the second option is a newer option within the termination process within the last year. This was added to help the initiator of the term process make sure that termination is really what is wanted to be accomplished. So if we click this open, we're going to see four options. Employee is leaving SSM and will not stay on as PRN. Employee is staying with SSM in another role. Employee is willing to stay on as PRN. An employee will end primary job and keep additional job. Now, of these four local termination reasons, only one reason will actually let you complete a full termination process. And that is the first one. Employee is leaving SSM and will not stay on as PRN. They will not be an employee in any capacity with SSM any longer. These last three options here are things that happen all the time, and depending on how a manager is thinking about the employee leaving their work area, it might be defined or translated as a termination for their own department, for their own work schedule, but it's not truly a termination from SSM. So these are kind of some bumper rails that we put in within the termination process to help us decide, do we actually want to go through with a termination? because we all know that rescinding a termination is a timely process that requires a lot of hands to get somebody back into the system and that termination rescinded. So let's talk about each one of these three options where we don't want to actually use the termination process. Employee is staying with SSM in another role. So if the employee who is leaving your work area is staying with SSM, they are taking a position with another manager in another ministry in another state, but they are remaining an SSM employee. That's what this means. In that case, you would not need to do anything. So let's just click this one and finish up, and we'll see the error message that comes through. It will tell us exactly what we should do instead of a termination. So we're going to enter the termination date. Last day of work and pay through date will automatically populate with the termination date. Last day of work may be a different date depending on the situation. Otherwise, you may leave it as it is. Pay through date, leave that alone. We want that to match the termination date. If you have a resignation date, you can place that in here as well. And is this position available for overlap? If it's in the future, it will automatically say yes. And you can leave that be. You can put in a comment here, and let's see what our error message is. So due to that termination, the local termination reason that we chose, if the employee is remaining with SSM in another role, please cancel this termination process and allow recruitment to process the job change. So if they are leaving your work area, going to work for someone else or in a different area, you as the current manager don't need to do anything. And most likely you will have had conversations with a recruiter to help determine a date that they are leaving your work area and going to start working for another manager. If you choose to backfill the hours that are being vacated by this employee, a requisition will automatically be generated for you to submit for approval once the job change is initiated to move the employee into the new role. So once the recruiter has done their work to process the job change on that employee, a job requisition will automatically show up in your inbox for processing to help backfill those hours. If you are processing your termination and you feel that employee is willing to stay on as PRN is the best option for this local termination reason, this also will not let you complete a termination. If this employee is choosing to stay PRN, you should also not process a termination. What you should do is use the request application to submit an FTE change request to decrease this employee in their current position down to PRN 0 hours. If you choose to backfill the hours that this employee is vacating, you will need to submit a new replacement requisition, and we give you the justification statement that workforce management would like to see in these situations. So we'll guide you along the way should you choose an option that will not let you allow, or that will not allow you to complete the termination process. So if they're staying PRN, reduce their hours in their current position number, and you'll submit for a new replacement rec if you would like to backfill. If this last option, employee will end primary job and keep their additional job, if they're an employee who has multiple positions, You also cannot complete the termination process, but instead, an Ask HR case will be required, and HRIS will need to get involved. In these situations, HRIS will do the work to make what is currently their additional job their primary job, and will help to end the position that you as the manager are having vacated by that employee. So again, as far as the local term reasons go, the only one option that will allow you to complete a termination process is when the employee is completely leaving SSM, will not stay as PRN, or in any other capacity. So if we go ahead and complete this process, an attachment will be necessary, as your HR partner will be looking for the resignation letter. If there is no actual resignation letter, or sometimes we've seen screenshots if the resignation has taken place over, say, text messaging with the manager, if you don't have anything that you can actually attach here, that's when we ask that a detailed comment is included with date of the conversation with the employee and any supporting information that you can include within that comment. But HR business partners do like to actually have an attachment whenever possible. So we can go ahead and submit. And now the termination process is on its way to be reviewed by the HR partner. Once the termination process is complete, that being it was reviewed and approved by the HR partner, the next thing that will happen is you as the manager will receive, let's just go in real quick and complete this process. The HR partner will review and approve. If it is lacking a resignation attachment or a detailed enough comment, HR partners will be sending those back to you as the manager to add more supporting information. So if we can do that on the front end, it will save some back and forth time. So that is complete. So let's go back as you, the manager. And we can see that you now have another inbox item associated with this termination process. That being the termination checklist that comes to you in regards to the employee that's just left. So this is some guidelines of some things that you should make sure to collect from the employee, things that you should make sure need to happen on your department, if applicable. And again, this is just a to-do, so you can review, and once you feel that these items have been completed, you can click submit, and that will get removed from your inbox. And the next thing that gets kicked off is that requisition that will automatically be generated when an employee leaves your work area. Now, if you start a termination and you choose one of those three answers that will not let you go forward with the process, then you're just stuck with a saved for later termination task sitting in your inbox. If you come up to this cog when you have the termination process up on your screen, this is what allows you to cancel that process because you cannot use it any longer and it will remove from your inbox. So the cog and cancel. And that trick will actually work with many inbox items as you're working through and you decide that you no longer want to submit the transaction that you are working on. Click the cog and you'll have a cancel option if applicable.
Hey, Laura, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you showed us what the manager gets in their inbox. When does the employee does the employee get any notifications or tasks?
So the only task a terminating employee will receive is once the termination is complete, an exit interview will be generated to their inbox for them to fill out.
Gotcha. And is that for voluntary and involuntary terminations?
That is for voluntary only.
Gotcha.
Involuntary terminations will not receive an exit interview.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, what to do if a termination is processed and for some reason it's decided that the employee is staying or that they decided to stay PRN? Though it is an involved process to rescind a termination, it can be done. So, as a manager, what we ask is that manager or HR submit an Ask HR case to rescind a termination. And the sooner the better. It is much harder to rescind a termination that has already passed and processed than it is for a termination that still has a future termination date. Okay, let's get a manager here that has some contingent workers, and we will go through how to end one. We have recently updated the manager manual to cover this process, so it is a bit more clear than it has been in the past. So let's go to just this first individual here. So to end a contingent worker contract, it's much the same process. You can find the option in job change, and it is end contingent worker contract. And simply to end a contingent worker contract, you will enter the contract end date. So let's just say that today is the day that the contract is ending, or if it was yesterday, or if it is in the near future, you will put the actual end date here. You can say the reason. We want to close the position, depending on your work area. And you can put your comment in here as to support this action. And when you click submit, that contract will be ended. So again, much like an employee, job change, end contingent worker contract, you want to put their actual end date here in contract end date, the reason, and submit. And that is how you end a contingent worker contract. So that about covers the termination process for items that I have to talk about.
There are some questions coming in. I do want to remind everyone about the manager guide. And like Laura mentioned, we have updated some of these processes and the documentation in that guide because we understand it can be confusing. So we've clarified and updated. So make sure if you have questions to search that guide. And then we'll be having some graphics as well in there for terminating an employee for these local term reasons. So Yeah, Gina, if you want to unmute and address some of those questions,
Sure.
or I can read them, whatever,
Oh,
whichever. Go ahead.
can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, everybody. So the first question is there an expected time frame that it should take HR to complete their piece of the termination? So what I can tell you, I didn't know if anyone else is going to answer, sorry. So what I can tell you there's definitely in the business process, there's how many days that they're supposed to take to complete that. We have it set at 3 days right now, that they should be turning around that piece of the termination and approving it. I would reach out with your local HR partner to see if you are having a delayed response in them, but most of them should be working their box on a daily basis. We put 3 days out there, but really they should be working them on a daily basis and approving. Now they could be sending them back to you or questioning them. But if you are having any issues, I would just have you follow up with your HR business partner on any delays. Next question is, we are to use cancel rather than skip the task. What happens when we use skip the task? Laura, do you want to explain this one? She probably does a better job than I.
So I am going to assume that we are now talking about when that requisition is automatically kicked out. Is what the skip the task sounds like to me. So
Probably, yeah.
if I go back to, I can bring it up and show everyone what I'm believing is being asked. So sorry, got to proxy back in. Okay, is this this task right here that was generated automatically when Danny was termed.
Yep.
So yes, so if you choose to not backfill these hours, if you do not need this requisition, you may click the cog and skip this task.
So when you skip a task like that, it's going to prompt you to put in a reason, and then you're going to hit OK. Then at that point, it basically just skips over exactly what it says. It skips over that process and doesn't, it goes to the next process and doesn't cancel it.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I'm just scrolling down. So we just had a person that, I just had a voluntary term that gave me an error message that the employee had another position and I was unable to term. So this is a very common thing. The employee kept telling me she did not. After doing research, realized that she was teaching clinicals for college. Okay, that's a lot more information, but I think what we're trying to get at is just around if somebody has an additional job, how do we go about terming them and what's the error they're going to get?
So
Laura, if you just want to circle. Yep, go ahead.
Sure. Yep. So this will be this could go a couple ways, right? Are they completely ending their time with SSM for all positions or just the position for your area? So once that scenario is answered, we can know a little bit better what to do. So if they're ending all positions, then the the manager of that additional position will need to go in and end additional job or end job. And then you, as the primary manager, can complete a full termination process. If they are keeping their additional job, so in this scenario, the individual was keeping their teaching position for clinicals, but ending their primary job, that's where an Ask HR case should be submitted, and HRIS will be able to help out with that scenario. And if ever in doubt when it comes to terminations with an individual who has additional jobs, an Ask HR case, another set of eyes can help you guide you through that scenario and what next steps should be.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. We are at our time limit. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today for Workday 101. Ask our experts. And please look for all the answers to the questions that were asked today in the next edition of the News, Views, and FAQs in the announcement section on the Workday homepage. Thank you so much. Hope everyone has a wonderful day.